Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You're prepping for that AP Environmental Science exam.
A big one.
Yeah, a really big one. And, well, today we're going to make a splash. Okay, sorry,
Had to get that one in
I
there.
had to, I had to. So we're talking aquatic biomes. Everything you need to know to ace those questions.
Absolutely. Think of us as like your super engaging study buddies for this deep dive. We're going to break down the must-know facts about both freshwater and marine biomes, and hopefully we'll have some fun along the way.
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump right in. Earth is 70% water, right? We all know that.
Right.
But here's the thing. Not all of it is usable for drinking or swimming. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Hmm.
That's where understanding different aquatic biomes is so important, not just for the exam, but for understanding how our planet actually works.
Okay, so define aquatic biome for us. What makes them so special?
So an aquatic biome is more than just a body of water. It's defined by a bunch of different things. Salinity, depth, water flow,
Yeah,
and all these things, they create unique environments that support, a bunch of different life forms.
I see. So like a rushing river versus a calm lake,
Yeah.
those are totally different worlds for the organisms that live there.
Exactly.
Okay, so just like we've got different neighborhoods in a city, we have different types of aquatic biomes, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
So what are the main categories we should know?
Broadly speaking, you've got your freshwater biomes and your marine biomes.
Okay, so give us some examples. What falls under freshwater?
So freshwater, you're thinking rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, wetlands, all that good stuff.
And marine.
Marine is your estuaries, coral reefs, and the vast open ocean.
Oh man, the open ocean. Okay, so let's start with freshwater. You mentioned rivers and streams.
Yeah.
Those are always flowing, right? Does that, like the speed of the flow, does that impact what lives there?
Oh, absolutely. So faster flowing water usually means less plant life. It's hard for them to, take root in that strong current. But as rivers form from streams converging, the flow slows down a bit. So more sediment and organic matter can settle. This creates a better environment for plants.
Okay, so it's like a chain reaction, starting with a little stream, building up to a massive river full of life.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, let's move on to lakes and ponds. They seem
Sure.
pretty chill at first glance,
Yeah, they do.
but I'm sure there's more to it.
Oh, there's definitely more to it. Beneath the surface, there are these distinct zones, and knowing these zones is super important for the AP exam.
Okay, so what are these zones?
So we've got the littoral zone, that's your shoreline area. Sunlight penetrates to the bottom, which allows a variety of plants to grow. Then you've got the limnetic zone, that's the open water area where sunlight still reaches. This is where phytoplankton thrive.
Phytoplankton, that's the base of the food web, right?
You got it.
Yeah.
Definitely important to remember those.
Okay, and then what happens as we go deeper?
As we go deeper, we hit the profundal zone. Sunlight doesn't reach down here, so it's much darker and colder. Less dissolved oxygen.
So not much photosynthesis happening down there. What kind of organisms can live in the profundal zone?
Mostly decomposers and some fish that have adapted to those low light conditions.
Makes sense. And remind me, what's the very bottom of any water body called?
That's the benthic zone. Doesn't matter if it's a lake or an ocean, bottom is bottom. That's where your bottom dwellers live. Worms, mollusks, bacteria, all hanging out down there.
Okay, so we've got our zones, but the slides also mention something about nutrient levels in lakes.
Right, so this is another key concept for the exam. You've got your oligotrophic lakes.
Oligotrophic.
Oligotrophic, yeah. They're low in nutrients, so the water's super clear, but there's not a ton of biological productivity happening. Then you've got your mesotrophic lakes, which are kind of in the middle, moderate level of nutrients supporting a good balance of plant and animal life.
Okay, and then what's the last type?
Last but not least, you have eutrophic lakes.
Eutrophic. What's so special about those?
They're like the all-you-can-eat buffet of lakes. They're packed with nutrients, but this can lead to excessive algae growth.
Like too much of a good thing.
Exactly. It's called an algal bloom. It can block sunlight and deplete oxygen, which disrupts the whole ecosystem.
That sounds pretty bad.
It can be, and it's often caused by human activities like agricultural runoff and wastewater discharge. We call this process eutrophication. Definitely a term to remember for the exam.
Got it. Eutrophication. Bad news.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered rivers and lakes. What else is there in the freshwater world?
We can't forget about wetlands.
Wetlands? Aren't those just swamps?
Well, swamps are a type of wetland, but there are also marshes, bogs, and other variations. They're all characterized by water-saturated soil, and they support a ton of unique plant and animal life.
Like all those bugs and things I try to avoid when I'm hiking.
Well, yeah, but they're important bugs and things. Wetlands are like natural filters. They purify water and reduce flooding. They're also really important habitats, especially for birds.
Okay, I see their value now.
Sadly, though, a lot of wetlands have been drained for agriculture and development, which has had a big impact on the environment. This is another topic you might see on the exam, so it's worth knowing about the ecological and economic impacts of losing these wetlands.
Okay, noted wetlands, super important, but also vulnerable.
Exactly. Now that we've covered the freshwater scene, are you ready to dive into the marine biomes?
Do it.
Okay, so let's start our marine exploration with a really unique environment where freshwater rivers meet the salty ocean. We're talking estuaries and salt marshes.
Estuary salt marshes, so brackish water, right?
Yeah.
Not quite fresh water, not quite the ocean. Seems like a tough place to live.
You'd think so, but estuaries and salt marshes are actually super productive. They're like a mix of both worlds. The freshwater and saltwater creates a nutrient-rich environment that supports a huge variety of life.
Huh. So it's like the best of both worlds?
Kinda, yeah. And they also act as natural filters. They trap pollutants from rivers and stop them from reaching the open ocean. Pretty cool, right?
Wow, so they're like the guardians of the coast, keeping things clean.
Exactly. And on top of that, they're vital nurseries for a lot of fish and shellfish species.
What do you mean by nurseries?
Oh, so the calmer waters provide a safe haven for young organisms to grow and develop before they head out to the open ocean, like their little kindergarten.
Oh, that's kind of cute. Okay, so from estuaries, let's move on to, what did the slides say? Mangrove swamps.
Mangrove swamps, yes. They're found in the tropics, and they're known for those crazy roots that grow above the water.
Yeah, I've seen pictures. They look so weird.
They're definitely unique. But those aerial roots, they're called pneumatophores, and they allow the mangroves to breathe, even when they're submerged in waterlogged soil.
So it's like they have snorkels.
Uh-huh, kind of.
Yeah.
And those roots also help stabilize the shoreline and prevent erosion. They're pretty important.
Wow, so they're like the protectors of the coast.
Exactly. And they provide a habitat for tons of species, from fish and crabs to birds and even monkeys.
It's amazing how these seemingly inhospitable places are actually teeming with life. Like each adaptation is so perfectly suited to its environment.
That's a great point. And remember that relationship between form and function. That's a key biological concept. You might see it pop up on the exam.
Okay, good to know. So mangroves are a perfect example. Their roots allow them to breathe in a challenging environment.
Exactly. Now, speaking of challenging environments, let's talk about intertidal zones.
Tidal zones. Remind me what those are again?
They're the areas along the coast that are submerged at high tide and exposed at low tide.
Oh, yeah. So the organisms that live there have to deal with some pretty extreme conditions.
Yeah, fluctuations in temperature, salinity, wave action, they have to be tough to survive.
So how do they do it?
Adaptations, my friend.
Yeah.
Adaptations barnacles have those strong shells that cling to rocks. Mussels burrow in the sand. Sea stars have tube feet for grip. It's all about survival of the fittest.
Wow, it's like a boot camp for marine life. Only the strongest survive.
Uh-huh. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect example of natural selection at work. Okay, are you ready to move on to the main event?
The main event, you mean coral reefs.
Coral reefs, yes.
Yeah.
The rainforests of the sea, known for their beauty and incredible biodiversity, they support so many different species. It's mind-blowing.
Okay, before we dive into that, I remember learning about the symbiotic relationship between corals and algae. Can you refresh my memory on that?
Sure, so coral polyps, the tiny animals that actually build the reef, they have this mutualistic relationship with algae called zooxanthellae. The algae live inside the coral and provide it with food through photosynthesis. And in return, the coral gives the algae a safe place to live.
So they help each other out. It's a win-win.
Exactly. But sadly, you also mentioned coral bleaching, which is a huge threat to these ecosystems.
Yeah, what causes that again?
Coral bleaching happens when corals get stressed out, usually due to rising water temperatures or pollution. They basically expel the zooxanthellae, which causes them to lose their color and turn white.
And without the algae, the coral is more likely to die.
Unfortunately, yes. And climate change is a major driver of coral bleaching. It's a big problem.
That's so sad. Coral reefs are so important. They're beautiful and biodiverse,
Yeah,
but they're also super vulnerable.
exactly. They protect coastlines from erosion. They support fisheries. Their decline has a ripple effect.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, from estuaries to coral reefs. Now, what about the open ocean? What's lurking out there in those depths?
All right, so we're heading out to the open ocean, the last stop on our aquatic biome tour. It's like space, but underwater. What makes the open ocean so different from the other biomes?
Well, for starters, it's massive. It's the largest biome on Earth, covers over 70% of the planet's surface.
Wow, 70%. That's huge. And it's deep, too, right?
Oh, yeah, super deep. Average depth is over 2 miles.
2 miles. That's crazy. Okay, so how does anything survive in such a vast and deep environment? Like, where's the food come from?
That's where things get really interesting. So sunlight can only penetrate so far into the ocean, right? So that creates distinct zones. The upper layer where the sunlight reaches is called the photic zone.
Photic zone. Got it.
That's where you find most of the action.
Hmm.
Lots of phytoplankton, which are the base of the food web. And of course, all kinds of fish, marine mammals, and other creatures that rely on those phytoplankton.
So the photic zone is like the party zone. Everyone's hanging out up there. Pretty much. But then as you go deeper beyond the reach of sunlight, you enter the aphotic zone.
A photic zone sounds kind of spooky.
It is a little bit. It's a world of perpetual darkness.
So no plants down there.
Not in the traditional sense.
Hmm.
But life finds a way. Many organisms in the aphotic zone have evolved bioluminescence. They can create their own light.
Whoa, that's awesome. So it's like they have their own little underwater rave going on down there.
Exactly. But even with bioluminescence, they still need energy to survive. And since there's no sunlight for photosynthesis, they have to get it another way.
Which is?
Chemosynthesis. Remember those hydrothermal vents we talked about earlier?
Vaguely.
Okay, so those vents release chemicals from the Earth's interior, and some bacteria have evolved to use those chemicals as an energy source.
So they're like eating chemicals.
In a way, yeah. It's called chemosynthesis, and it forms the base of the food web in the aphotic zone.
That is so cool. Life really does find a way, even in the darkest depths of the ocean.
It's pretty amazing. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from those little freshwater streams all the way to the vast open ocean. Any big takeaways you think our listeners should remember, especially for that AP exam?
Well, first off, I think understanding those defining characteristics of each biome is super important. Salinity depth, water flow, nutrient levels, all that stuff. It all shapes what kinds of organisms can survive in each environment.
Exactly. Like those mangroves with their crazy roots. They've adapted to live in salty water. Remember form and function.
Right, form and function, classic AP bio concept. And of course, adaptations are key to survival in any biome.
Definitely. Think about those intertidal zone organisms that can handle those extreme tides and temperatures, or those deep-sea creatures that use bioluminescence to navigate the darkness.
It's all about survival of the fittest out there in the wild.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the impact of humans on these aquatic biomes. Pollution, habitat destruction, climate change, all major threats.
Yeah. Human impact is always a big topic on the AP exam, so it's important to understand those connections.
I feel like I've learned a ton today. Thanks for guiding me through this aquatic adventure.
Anytime. Remember, learning about aquatic biomes isn't just about passing a test. It's about understanding how our planet works and appreciating all the amazing life that exists in these environments.
So true. And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be inspired to become marine biologists or something.
That would be awesome. But even if you don't go into marine biology, knowing about this stuff is just cool. You'll be the most interesting person at your next trivia night.
Definitely. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in to another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See ya!